Good morning. Sawadee krap. It's a pleasure to be here again this year. And once again, it's a privilege of mine to be the moderator for this panel, which I would frankly say is the real deal. So today, this session will be looking at the concept of AI in financial services through the lens of financial inclusion. My name is Daniel Wu. I'm the head of financial services for AWS Public Policy in Asia Pacific. And it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists today. We have Pak Dino Setiawan, who is CEO of Awan Tunai from Indonesia. Thank you for joining us in Bangkok today. We have Kun Sam Tansakun, who is Managing Director of Krungsri Finovate. Thank you for joining us, Kun Sam. And then lastly, Kun Okrit Unahalekaka, who is co-founder and CEO of Recode in Thailand. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you. Earlier, we just heard from a speaker from Microsoft who spoke about the breadth and depth on AI in financial services, how it can accelerate outcomes and in many ways provide a breakthrough for the way financial services are being delivered to the communities and segments that we served. Today, for this particular panel, we want to try to reflect on some of those themes and outcomes, and then most importantly, consider that through the lens of financial inclusion. So let's get started. To kick this off, maybe we just give off a question to get everyone warmed up. Pak Dino, we'll start with you. From your perspective, why AI? Tell us a bit more about your Awan Tunai, how AI is infused in the services that you provide, and then what's such distinctive factors about AI that really helps you success?
Thank you, Daniel. So I consider AI really as quite an advanced form of automation where it has capabilities to learn and improve by itself. Now, recently there's been major advancements in AI, and it's been very exciting because it's been driven by three key drivers. The first one is really availability of computational power, which of course cloud computing is something your organization provides. The second one is really the advancements in algorithms. And the algorithms, of course, power the learning, but one of the key things with algorithms is that it can also compensate for the deficiencies in the third point, which I consider the most important, and that's availability of digitized data. So there's been a real abundance of digitized data, which has really powered what AI is capable of. Now, you've asked what has Awan Tunai developed in the AI space. So Awan Tunai actually provides supply chain financing to a lot of the traditional grocery stores, the traditional wholesalers and distributors within Indonesia. And for a long time, banks have struggled to serve this segment because of lack of information. Financial statements are unreliable in the SME space. And what Awan Tunai did was it actually developed ERP systems for this traditional segment. So we essentially started digitizing a lot of the manual transaction data. And that's what I mean. That third point is really important because previously supply chain transaction data could be paper invoices. It's invisible to most organizations. But we actually developed ERP systems that started digitizing all this transaction data at scale.
Thank you very much, Pak Dino. Kun Okrit, to turn it over to you. You have a similar perspective coming out from Thailand, and your organization has done really some fantastic work working with the farming community. Could you tell us more about what the work that you're doing, how's AI infused in the services that you provide?
Yeah, sure. So I can talk more about my work at Recode. So basically what we do is a bit quite similar in the sense that we are trying to bring financial solution to the underserved, right? Especially those who have been historically have been lacking the access. So in my opinion, farmers are pretty much like SME, right? I mean, in this conference, we have been speaking so much about technology, about innovation, about financial access. But I think we have to put the face to the people that this technology actually help. Because I think that if there is technology but it doesn't help empower the poor or the underserved, I think there is no use of the technology. So that's my opinion. So a little bit of background of farmers is that 40% of the Thai population are farmers, but their average income based on the research from Bank of Thailand is just around $200 a month per family, right? So that is even lower than the minimum wage of the workers in Thailand, right? So if you are saying that 40% of the Thai population are getting so low income and the banks are not financing them. So I think this is a big social problems that I believe AI can come in and help solve these issues, right? So I think the farmers are pretty much like us. They have families, they have children to feed. So basically all of them want to have higher income, higher profitability in their life. So what we do at Recount is that we bring in technology, we bring in AI to help farmers make better decisions through satellite, through various data sources to help them improve their productivity. And also, we also work with financial institutions to finance them with the seed, with the fertilizer, or with the machineries that they need to improve their productivity even more, right? So I think many people in Thailand believe that farmers are poor because farming is a low-income jobs. But if you read the news from Bill Gates, maybe last year, right, he said that out of his portfolio in his investment of his family office, actually farming was his best return of the year, right? So he invested a lot in farming and farmland investment. So I think the main answer to that is that if you do farming right and you use the right data, you can get pretty good income from farming, as you can see from the farmers in the US, but not in Thailand, because farmers in Thailand are pretty old and they are pretty small size. So my goal is that how do we uplift this group of people through technology and through financial access? And I think AI can help with this problem.
Super cool, Kun Great. Thank you very much. Kun Sam, building upon the micro perspective that we just heard from Pak Dino and Kun Great, you are in your particular role, you have to take a more visionary aspect to the work that you do. So can you tell us more as you look at some of the long-term trends and the current direction of travel? How do you see AI developing in Thailand? What are some of the key outcomes that you think the industry is trying to achieve? What's the X factor here?
Okay, so thank you, Daniel. So I think basically when we talk about AI, we have to look on the top layer first. I think every corporate in Thailand, so every company or even SME, we're talking about digital transformation. Whenever we talk about digital transformation, it derives into two factors. Either you want to increasing your revenue or you want to increase your productivity. That means you need to reduce the cost. And when you look on the layer three now, on the technology who can be supporting in each these two factors, and definitely we see the AI is one of the good and top technology to help either increasing the revenue or help increasing the productivity. That's why, in points of the banking or in Krungsi, we see these technologies and how can we apply the technologies into supporting these two factors. And if we cannot do by ourselves, it either, when we talk about digital transformation, we have three of them. We build by ourselves, or we buy the investment, or we buy the technology, or then we invest in the technology. And definitely today, I'm gladly that we do have our two portfolio startup here. One Recount in Thailand, who are specifically focused in AI in agri-fintech into the farming. And we have Dino from 129. So we co-invest with Mitsubishi Financial Group, other mother banks in Indonesia, to help on the supply chain financing. And basically, I think the reason is that when we see the foundation of Thailand, the two factors that we need to stimulate the country, especially on economy and GDP, are the farmers and the SME. So if we still keeping like this for few years, I don't think we can see how can we beat even our neighborhood countries. So we see that if we could use the AI technologies, we can find the good alternative scoring alternative data to help improve of the lending, and yet we are the bank, and bank need the good data. So if we are confident in data, so we can be eager and more supportive for lending. So we hope that in the very near future we can supporting them to lend to the farmers and the SME. So that's why AI is very important in this world now.
Thank you, Kun Sam. Earlier, just hearing you guys get warmed up with this question, I think one of the key themes that I'm starting to take away is that it all focuses around inclusion and accessibility. So while previously AI might be for organizations with large war chests and focusing on very specific mass segments, but instead, through the eyes of your work, I'm starting to see that there's a real opportunity here to drive social impact and change if we specifically target some of these segments using the power of AI as a breakthrough. Okay, now let's get a little bit more hands-on, really get deep into the details. Love to hear more about some of the challenges you're facing. Pak Dino, you're on my right. I'll start with you first. You spoke about the work that Awantuna is doing, the communities that you serve. Can you tell us a bit more how specifically AI has really provided a breakthrough for your organization? But most importantly, what are some of the challenges that you face in serving that? You spoke earlier about data. Tell us a bit more. How did you overcome some of those challenges?
Sure. So let me share some numbers first in terms of what Awantunai has actually achieved in the field. So over the last 4 years, Awantunai has dispersed over $1 billion in financing for the SMEs. And this was for the purchase of their inventory. Now, the credit performance on that actually was better than the Indonesian industry banking loss rates for secured credit. So for the bankers in this room, you may ask, how on earth is unsecured credit going to outperform secured credit? Now, SME banking for a long time has been collateral-based because a lot of the financial statements that SMEs provide are not reliable. Some have double bookkeeping, and hence banks will rely on collateral. Hard collateral, typically 150% coverage. Now, that's very limiting for an SME. Once an SME has provided all of its collateral, it simply can't grow as a business anymore. So what Awantuna is focused on is how can we get true understanding of that SME's operations so that it would be safe to lend to them without the collateral. And the data that we really invested to acquire was ERP systems capturing what a wholesaler would purchase, what a wholesaler would sell. Now, with those two data sets, we're able to see the efficiency of a wholesaler, and essentially that operational data is highly predictive of business performance and credit performance. In terms of challenges, accessing that data was really the key thing, and it boils down to two things. There's a technological constraint. How do you digitize boxes and boxes of paper invoices? Back in 2019, before we developed our AI systems, we were actually, my field teams were actually collecting paper invoices, inputting it directly into the database. It was that manual. But all the bankers here know humans assessing risk works. You send a field surveyor to make sure that the warehouse is real, that the inventory is real. You do trade checking. You talk to all of the stakeholders, the suppliers and the customers of that business. Those are true, tried and tested risk management methods which work. The problem is the operational expense is very high. And you could almost think of this as wholesale banking risk assessment, that because of automation that we've achieved on the AI side, we're able to apply that same methodology to the SME and even micro segments. And that's what Krung Sang was mentioning, that part of the AI contribution can actually be on the productivity side of things. So we were able to automate enough so that we can use typically very expensive, high-touch risk assessment methodologies for the smaller segments. So that was the technological difficulty of acquiring the data. Then the second point is also the trust. Will they actually release the data to you? And that's an entirely different challenge which we were able to overcome.
That's wonderful. And I'll pick up on that data point again. That's so important, and I'd love to, thread that needle in a subsequent topic. Maybe we'll turn over from a Thailand perspective. Kun Okrit, tell us a bit more about some of the ways that Recode has manifested AI in the services that it provides to the farming communities. But most importantly, do you share the same view on the data issue that Pak Dino had mentioned? How did you overcome some of that?
Yeah, so for me, interestingly, the technology side, right, it took us time. I mean, our founding team are all engineers, computer scientists, so we are pretty much know how to code AI, right? And basically building technology itself, we can just read various research paper and we can build the technology up, right? And it takes a couple of years to fine-tune the technology. But in our opinion, the challenge of doing financial inclusion for the farmers are actually managing the stakeholders involved, from the banks and to the farmers, right? So basically, how do we build trust, right? Once we have the technology, we believe that the technology is good. How do we convince the farmer to trust our technology and change the way that they have been farming for generations, right? First of all, we have to let them know first that the way that they are farming are not as efficient as it can be, and they should switch the way. But most of these farmers are in their 60s, their 70s, right? They are used to traditional ways. So our first challenge is that how do we convince them to use technology and to prove their productivity? And second is that convincing the farmer is one part. Convincing the bank is also another challenge, right? How do we convince the bank to believe that lending to the farmer is good enough, that there is a huge market opportunity? Because I think in Thailand, people usually look at the farmer as a lump sum of like 20 million people. They are the same. But in our opinion, everyone here are probably from like consulting or banking, right? You probably know that there are different market segmentation, right? Basically, half of the population might not be creditworthy, but I still believe that the top half of the Thai farming sector, which are around 10 million people, are trustworthy enough and good enough that we can probably have a huge market size to lend to. So I think that's a building trust and building confidence that takes many years to do.
Thank you very much, Kun Ogrit. Kun Sam, we just heard from your two portfolio companies speak to two, I think, important concepts. One is the idea of healthy and hygienic data pipeline. And second of all is the actual idea of trust, that the data owners would be willing to share that data in order to receive certain services. Now that you've reflected upon this, can you speak to your view upon, as you look at an investment perspective, how you see a number of your portfolio companies or even some of the prospective companies you hope to invest in, how they tackle data and trust? How important is that to you? How do you see them overcoming some of the challenges to win you over?
Okay, so I think there are several challenges when you talk about how to gather the data. But let me pinpoint to what we have been done in the bank first before I get into our portfolios. So we were running the innovation center at the bank. And I think we still are the first bank who launched the AI in conversational, both voice and non-voice for call center. So that has been launched for, I think, almost 3 years. So we have about 3 bots right now. If it is a credit card, it's called AI Manao. If it is Krungsi Auto, we have Auto AI Pa, and then we have another AI. If you call to our call centers, AI Bella in Krungsi. So this is the very difficulty, I think, when we talk about AI conversational in Thai language. I think 5 years back, we were talking with a lot of tech partners, the global tech. And when we talk about, and then I could remember, I remember went to the one headquarter, couldn't mention the name, they said that, okay, their first language is English, Hindi, Chinese. And I was raising my hand up, said, how about Thai language? Can you see on the bottom right, on the next chart, there will be in 5 years or 10 years that they will be developing the Thai language. And that's the first answer to me that I cannot be waiting for the tech partners to develop the Thai language at that time. So that's why we come back and we talk seriously at my team that, okay, let's do on our own. So to do the AI, I think to gather the data, the very key important that we have to keep patient on this one. We hire 50 outsourced staff to listen to over 1 million calls every day, to tag all the data out from the recorded message, and then tag all the data what customer talk in each conversation. And then we got, I think, over than 10,000 intents for the AI to be trained. So that's why 3 years back we have been successfully launching the first AI, and still now, I don't know, maybe very too hard to do on this one. So we still launch now in the first one to launch the AI conversational, both voice and non-voices. So this is part, I think that, and then the team, I have to thank gratefully to my team that we have very been patient and increasing the bot all the times. So right now, what we see that the bot itself could answer very easy question to customers. When the time come to the very hard questions, then it will go to bots. So this is part of why we create the bots. For example, people often call to Krungsi credit card call centers, and then they often ask, how much is my outstanding? How much is my bonus points? It's very easy question, you mean, and our call center, I ask them, they quite get bored to answer this every call that they have to answer this. But why not? We give this answer to bot to answer that. And can you imagine in our call center, there are few customers call us 350 times a year. So it's in that she call us every day. But the reason is that time we don't have any digital to be proven to her that how much is her credit outstanding. So she need to ensure that every time she go out of the home, she has a credit balance enough to pay. But that's why she needs to call us. So whenever we see this group of customers, we say, why? What happened with this customer? Why? They often call us every day. But when we look at the reason behind that, yet we don't have the technology to be answering that. So that time we launched a You Choose, the mobile application. We have the AI now to be answering for those customers to answer it. So now it's run perfectly now, but it has to be increasing. So AI, that time, it was in kindergarten now. But I think after 3 years now, I think I can say that she is already in secondary school. And we have the CS call center team, a bot has been upgraded to be the bot trainer now, training them, I think, waiting them to be in high school very soon. So this is the part that are very, very working hard now. And this is not only the AI with conversational, with inbound now. The team are working with the outbound for collection team. So now our collection team will be having an outbound call using the AI to calling the customer, but we have to prevent and make a customer understand that it's not the call gangster. This is the real Gungsi AI calling them to help them on the collection side as well. So this is the powerful of AI that we have been working.
Thank you very much, Kun Sam. I think you touch on a very important element for our next line of questioning. We heard from data hygiene to trust, and then Kun Sam, you talked about the human element in solving some of these challenges, and then still today continues to play an important role as AI is being shaped in the delivery of financial services. Humans, let's go one layer deeper. Ultimately, in every organization, it's human behind the science and the magic of AI. And it brings into mind, earlier Microsoft spoke about responsible AI, and naturally that's a very important topic that comes about in the minds of regulators, policymakers, but not only that, financial institutions and consumers that you serve. So we'd love to dive a little bit deeper into this. Kun Okrit, love to start with you first. You spoke already about the element of trust, and then paired with Microsoft's narrative on responsible AI, can you tell us a bit about how you're looking at the concept of responsible AI, in some cases the ethical stewardship of data? How is that manifesting in your organization? Tell us more.
Yeah, so I believe that AI have opportunity for people who know how to use it, but also a risk for people who don't use it. What it means is that I think people are getting more scared now that AI might replace many jobs in the next few decades, right? So pretty much I have a small children. I'm still not sure what jobs he will do in the next 10 or 20 years, right, with AI coming up. But I think for farming it's the same, right? I think we need some regulation and policy to help manage. For example, as I mentioned that with our technology, right, we can help farmers improve income, right? And it takes us so long to convince the farmer to use our technology and trust us. So we did an experiment. We, as a company, we rented our own land. We farm ourselves with our technology, and we double the productivity of what normal farmers make, right? So if I don't care about the poor people or the farmers, maybe I should just go and rent more and more land and just compete against the farmers, right? But that won't be good because technically I'm optimizing my technology for full profitability of farming, and I don't help anyone else. But I think one of the main reasons that we started as a company to help the underserved. So I think the question is that how do we make sure that AI don't come and just compete against the people who don't want to use technology and don't know how to use the technology, and uplift everyone together.
I really like that. So in a way, you're saying, AI is not for everyone. There is for some people, and it's most important to make sure that we're driving value for the segments that you serve. Kun Sam, over to you. From a Thailand perspective, do you agree with Kun Okrit's assessment?
Yes. I think basically when we talk about the AI ethics, I think we need to understand definitely on how AI accountabilities and even the securities of AI are being used. For examples, if you could remember when the commercial banks, not all the banks in Thailand are starting to say that we are going to reduce the branch. And that time, at the same time, that starting with the buzzword of AI. And all our branch, and every branch staff at all the banks, they got frightened They said, oh, is it will be replacing us or not? And at the same time, when we launched the AI Manao in Krung Si, so our call center agent, that time, I think very first month, they didn't understand exactly what AI going to be used. They see the team, the 50 people I told you, come and tag the data. They said, what happened in that room? Are they going to, is AI going to replace them or not? But afterwards, when we explained them, when we starting to do the pilot testing, we said that I mentioned the easy questions will be answered by bot. And you not get bored anymore. You can answer the complex question. And you are the call center, you are customer service. You would like to handle people with care. So now you will be more having time to talk with customers. If you know about the call center operation, we need what we call talk time limits. Maybe maximum it could be 2 or 3 minutes per call. And that's time you might have experience if you call the call center in the whole day. We have to very speedy, call very speed. I mean, okay, end up with the call. We said we didn't understand at all what the call center agent talk about. But now we have more time to talk with the special care. We can increase the talk time limit. More than 3 minutes now, we can talk more than that. And we can say that, okay, Kun Sam, today maybe the weather is going to raining. Don't forget the umbrella to take out. So even they know exactly, they have the time to talk. So this is what we have to ensure that now the AI ethics have the accountability that this is scope of AI. This is scope of bot, what are going to be trained. And now if you see that a lot of our call center agent has been re-skilled and upskilled themselves to be a bot trainer already. So now they see that, okay, so now they see the scope of AI and they're happy to sleep and talk with AI right now already. So this is, we really need to care about the AI accountability.
That's wonderful. You know, I think I really like the part where you spoke about the fact that there's still internal and external education to undertake to help them understand the value. And it's not some kind of like black box technology, but it's something that when deployed appropriately and effectively, that it really adds value to the lives around us. Pak Dino, love to hear your take on this. You know, you have a very unique perspective to our panel today. You're from Indonesia. Help us understand, you know, your challenges and your own take on responsible AI. Are there Indonesia-specific factors from your perspective that is really driving your mental model around this?
Sure, let me share 2 cases. And Daniel, I actually really liked how you described it, right? Ethical stewardship of data. So Awantuna has faced initially a lot of resistance when we actually requested for this highly valuable transactional data. Because if you think about a distribution business, if you know who that distributor buys from, at what price, and you know who they sell to, again, at what price, you effectively have the power to shut them down. And unfortunately, there was a case of this happening. There was a very large Indonesian kind of e-commerce platform, over $1 billion, $2 billion of financing. And they came in with a promise to all these traditional distributors, wholesalers, let us digitize your customers, like the micro grocery stores. Let us digitize them, we'll make your business a lot more efficient. So yes, their apps went down into the micro merchants. But then what this large company did was they actually decided to build their own distribution center. So they literally built a warehouse down the road from that original wholesaler and started stealing their customers. They were trying to displace the middlemen. Now, in the traditional supply chain, it's a very tight-knit community. Word got out, so there was uproar. And that particular company, in a way, got boycotted by the supply chain industry, and essentially they didn't succeed. So that breach of trust was what we felt when we initially asked the wholesalers, we need access to your transaction data so that we can provide low-cost financing to you. Initially, they said, no, I don't trust you. Right? So we actually had to lend to them first manually. That's why my team was in there collecting paper invoices, scanning it, entering it into the database. But fortunately, once you lend someone money, it's easier to build the trust. And we've been very consistent with our brand. I will meet with traditional wholesalers and hand over heart. I will say, I will never take your customers and I will never sell your data. So building that trust, right, Kung Okrit has mentioned, is extremely important. And that's part of the human element of all this, right? that Microsoft presentation always talk about the co-pilot. There's not going to be some robot that goes out there and grabs all the data. You need human beings to build the trust first. Now, the second point I wanted to touch on is actually, we know humans have bias, right? And in the Indonesian underwriting industry, I know there's a certain bias against certain races or minorities. It's perhaps, let's say, a bit more of a nomadic community. So in business, sometimes the shop just disappears overnight. Now, I know certain financial institutions have a certain bias in terms of providing credit to that minority. Now, humans do train the machine learning, right? And if I can give an example of how humans might train the AI incorrectly, let's say we all know there's a high correlation between credit quality and income. But let's say it's too difficult to get income data, so you try to find a proxy, and let's say you use a race or a certain community group. Now, what if in a particular country, a certain community group are typically low income? So the machine learning will pick up that, oh, this community group is bad credit, only because it picked up on the wrong correlation, that just because this community group is typically low income, it picked up on that, oh, low credit is correlated with low income. So, you know, as our humans train the machine learning models, the AI models, we need to be careful that we're not bringing in our human biases into the training.
I really like your explanation. It takes a very human-centered approach, and I think you'd love to dive deeper into the next phase of our questions. You know, heard from each three of you on how there's a fundamental human element from an internal perspective driving your leadership and stewardship of the use of AI in the various services that you provide. At the same time, you know, the key point is that at some point in that delivery and chain of value that's being provided, it hits the consumer. And then they're the ones who determine, do I want to use you? Pak Dino, you spoke about the fact that you're building that trust. You know, earlier from a policy perspective, we often talk about concepts like fairness, explainability, transparency. And obviously that will manifest in the financial services. But from the customers that you serve, the segments that you serve, tell us more from your perspective, how well is that understood amongst the customers that you serve? Do they care? How much do they care? Is there a role for us to play in educating them as a financial services provider? Yeah,
so perhaps I need to differentiate. Let's say in the case of Krungsi Bank, the AI is very visible because you have bots speaking directly with humans. In our case, a lot of the AI tools that we've developed is less visible because it operates in the back end, in the risk assessment, which are typically hidden from the consumer. But what is highly visible to the consumer is, I come back to that ethical stewardship of the data, right? Because they know the highly sensitive commercial data that we have is potentially dangerous to them. If we betray them, if we release the data to a competitor, or if we sell it to potentially principals, that will damage their business. So, you know, in terms of how the consumer views it, in our case anyway, the most visible component of that is actually data privacy and how that data is being commercially safeguarded.
I really like that. You know, there's an inherent synergy between data and AI, and you can't have one without the other. I might say the third one is cloud, but that's a separate story. But that's really good. You know, all great. You know, from your perspective, you know, you similarly face challenges and frictions in serving the financial inclusion agenda, and the segments that you serve. Tell us more. Do you agree from a Thailand perspective with Pak Dino's assessment? You know, does the community care or understand about the principles that govern the use of AI in the services that you provide? If not, or if so, do we have a role to play in educating them about this?
Yeah, so actually I want to add one term to what you said, right? I think we need empathy to understand the group of customers that we are serving, right? So I think for you in Indonesia, SMEs, right? Usually I imagine they would be quite old and they are not quite educated, right? Quite similar to the group of farmers in Thailand as well. Average in the 50, 60, most of them have just up to 12th grade of education, right? To be honest, they don't care what AI and generative AI is, right? What they care is that what is this product helping them to improve their life, right? And I think most of them just want a couple of things. One is to have access to cash, and two is that to have higher profitability to feed their family, right? And the reason I say empathy is because, like, the group of farmers that I'm targeting are very different from middle class or upper middle class in Bangkok, right? One thing that I was very surprised is that farmers don't even know about the income and expense of like how much are they investing into their farm at the start of the season for seed, for fertilizer, for machinery, how much are they selling at the end of the season, what profitability they are getting, right? I would imagine that any one of us doing business, we would care about P&L, right? For these people in a rural area, what they only focus on is cash flow. I was very surprised, right? They just say, oh, I have this cash coming in, I just spend on this amount, and I sell, and I get this much cash back after paying for my children tuition, how much cash do I have left? So that's why many of these people are already in debt and why they have so bad cash management, right? Once we understand this, we can tailor and structure our financial product to match their cash flow and their cash need, and also help communicate to them on how they can improve their livelihood through our technology. But what I want to conclude is that they don't care what technology, what AI we are using. What they care is that how does it affect their cash flow and their profitability at the end of the day.
That's so interesting. You know, I really like the way you explained from a human-centric perspective and the empathy concept that you mentioned, because we talked a lot about how this super savvy technologies are supercharging financial services, but the reality is that the consumers or the businesses that you serve may not necessarily want or care about this kind of stuff. So there's an inherent then responsibility for the provider itself to make sure that the governance is in place, the guardrails are in place to make sure that there's an effective and ethical delivery of those financial services. Kun Sam, I want to turn over to you now. You just heard from a micro perspective, Kun Orkrit and Pak Dino in the Indonesia context on how some of these ethical challenges. So now that we have reflected upon the current state of AI in financial services, especially you shared about Krungsi's own experiences, love to ask a stargazing question to you. As you extrapolate where we are today, put in a few data points on policy and technology in the making, where is AI going to take us from here into the future of financial inclusion? Tell us more about some of your projections.
So we just heard about the generative AI. Sorry, we just heard about the generative AI from Microsoft. And yes, I think in terms of start with from the AI first. Now, I think we are strongly going well on the operation side to do the increasing productivity. But yet, I think most of the banks hasn't been done on the increasing in revenue yet. So now we are using heavily now the team are focusing on how can we get enough data to help in terms of ongoing with the AI in revenue. And basically, most of the revenue of the bank is come from the interest income. When we talk about interest income, yet lending is a key important thing. So now I think we need to train the data more. But the challenge is that we still not have the accurate and or completeness of the alternative data to ensure our risk management team to eager to lend on this one. So right now, what are we working in that? Okay, we don't go big yet. We can go on the smaller scale. So now as in Krungsi, we conduct a Krungsi Innovation Center team to help to create this one in the lab, to test the product, whether with I want to know or with Recount right now, to be testing that how can we be eager with a certain limit within the sandbox to be testing that how can we eager to be lend in this sector. So we got to use some example, some real customer to be testing out. So this is one thing. And the second part of the, apart from the traditional, what we call traditional AI, when we come to about the generative AI or Gen AI right now, I think we are going to be working out right now in our innovation center to see how can we go with Gen AI. I think back to our call centers, I think you see the use case of Microsoft right now. I think this had been pain point for us for a few years already in our call center. We were thinking that how can we do what we call call monitoring on customers' agent. So every time when you call to the customers, there will be some supervisor spot the call, whether this call is being communicating well or not, in the script or not, that answer well or not to customer. So we use a lot of supervisor to monitoring the call. Yet our Krungsi data science team has created the voice sentiment already. Just only the voice sentiment. So just mean that if this call go green, that is fine. But if it's some not good conversation between our customers and our call center agent. Maybe sometimes our customer get angry with some reason. It will alert in the red flag. So that means that our supervisor has to be tapped now. So it's already been started on this one. But now, with the generative AI, it's going to have what we call speed to text. And it can be clearly understanding deeply in that conversation how the conversation goes on that one. So the generative AI will be alert if it's a very great one, a very not incompetent conversation. So the supervisor can tap in the call. So that was the generative AI that we are looking at. And then a few right now we are testing about in our knowledge management center. So now every time, for example, our branch staff always have some difficulties. And now they have a knowledge management to be talking with. But the broader idea maybe it's not that the particular in the context of the banking knowledge you cannot find on the knowledge management. But this knowledge management will be easier to be tapped with the wider answers, so they can be used in that. So another example. The third example that we are interested in that, okay, whenever you talk to the bot right now, okay, so for example, the iPhone 15 will be launching very soon, right? So basically, if they call to our call center, AI will say, okay, today we have 0%, 10 months in these stores. That's it, what they can talk. But whenever the customer says, how can I go to maybe Central Chitlom? So is it available in the stock or not? Okay, so probably the generative AI itself will be, can gather the data and answer to the customer. Whoever is maybe Central Chitlom already announced on the social media that it's out of stock already. You don't have to go. Now you have to go Central Rama 9 or other branches. It can be scroll the data and grab the data and then inform the customer precisely real time with the bot. So this is maybe the agent doesn't have to go and type and file itself. So this is the powerful of generative AI that we going to be seen in very near future.
Fascinating. Certainly, we saw the distinction between traditional AI and Gen AI, and then I think you articulated that really well on where that's going to take us into the future. By the way, it's funny you mentioned Central Rama 9 and Chitlom because I would say Central Eastfield, that's where I'm from. So thank you, Khun Sam. And now, to the final question for our panelists today. It's about policy. So in my particular role every day, I work on public policy. I engage financial regulators and cross-cutting national authorities on designing public policy and regulations. And one of the key concepts that we always talk about in these policy discussions is that there's a spectrum from tailwind to headwinds, and ideally you want to have to calibrate regulations that leans towards tailwinds. So in order to address that, the regulators often ask, what do you have for us? What do you recommend? And this is the questions I love to pose for our panel today. Pak Dino, I'll start with you. From an Indonesia context, you've had your own policy and regulations that you have to contend with, and in a highly regulated industry such as financial services, that's extremely important. Reflecting on your experiences, what do you recommend for policymakers as they consider the use of AI in financial services? In some ways, what has worked well, and what's a bit too early to tell?
Sure. Look, I come back to the three things that I've felt has really driven AI advancement. First is really access to computational power. Second, advanced algorithms. And third, data, validated data. So on the first one, computational power. In the early days when I129 and I first started, early 2017, cloud computing was still a little bit restricted in Indonesia. I think there was only one provider. Now, as you've updated me, all three of the major players are there. But really, low-cost computational power is required. AI is very hungry on the computational side, and to really achieve greater advancements, you do need that power. And I think even from the Microsoft presentation that they were saying that next level of AI, the generative AI, is even more power hungry again. So that access to computational power is really critical for your financial institutions. Okay. The second point around algorithms. Now, algorithms is what drives the actual learning within the machine learning. And you really need talented data scientists for this. I have to say, I really struggled to find the talent, the data science talent, not just in Indonesia, but even regionally. Even in Singapore, they're not easy to find. Right now, our chief science officer, she's actually out of the US, right? And we've built a bit of a science team out of China and the UK. So this is a much harder problem because certainly data science talent is in demand worldwide. And perhaps whatever policies can actually foster such talent to come to Thailand, I think is quite critical. Within Indonesia, unfortunately, sometimes access to foreign talent is not easy. For example, at the director level, I think the OJK, right, the financial regulator there, stipulates that any foreign director must cycle out and be replaced by local talent within 3 years. Now, when that local talent doesn't exist, it becomes a major problem, and that's why our chief science officer role was not on soil. We had to simply open up the position offshore. So access to that talent is critical because the algorithms don't only enhance the learning, but it can actually make up for certain deficiencies on the data side of things. So for example, many of our grocery stores will shop or get their inventory from multiple wholesalers. Now, we only have data visibility on wholesalers that are within our network, like using our ERP system. So sometimes we only see 30% or 30 to 70% of a grocery store's inventory purchases. Yet with advanced algorithms, and this one we actually patented, you can actually infer what that grocery store's 100% sales are with just only a 30% view. That's validated. Now, finally, to the third point, data. Look, some data is better than others, right? We know e-commerce has generated a lot of transaction data, but lending in the e-commerce space has been problematic. So validated data is extremely important, and that's why we've built ERP6 systems that you can validate to bank statements, upstream and downstream. Now, I hear in Thailand there's the Open Data Initiative, right, to essentially open up bank statement data across all banks and all customers. That is critical data infrastructure, and I really applaud the BOT for doing this. It will lay a very powerful foundation for Thai financial institutions to build AI on top of that.
Cloud, data, talent. Amazing. I love that. And in fact, I want to reiterate on the cloud point note, in order to drive that computational power, AWS is investing in a $5 billion region cloud infrastructure investment in Thailand in order to bring those capabilities to Thailand and also to the rest of the world. Kun Okrit, turn over to you. What policy recommendations do you have from a Thailand perspective?
Yeah, so I think many things would be quite similar to what you already mentioned in Indonesia, but maybe I can add a couple of more that I think is quite critical. One is that how do we reduce the number of regulation in Thailand? Because as a small company, okay, let's go back to the main point first. I believe that in order for us to be more competitive as a country, right, I think we need more innovation and more people to come up and build more startups and technology to solve many problems, right? The question is that what are the things that are limiting those innovation coming up? I think there are two things that I face. One is that there are so many regulations in Thailand that if you want to do everything cleanly and on the table, there are so many licenses that you have to apply for to run a company, right? I want to sell a drone, I have to apply for one license. I want to sell fertilizer, seed, banking, I have to apply for so many licenses that it takes so much time. And two is that the speed of approval, right? So each license takes time to get approved. So basically it takes so long. And I know that there are many agencies in Thailand that try to give grants or try to do like matching fund in Thailand to help startup have enough cash flow to go through from year to year, right? I think we have many good examples from Singapore or Korea that the government have very good policy to speed up startup, right, and to support startup. In Thailand, we try to do something similar, but the speed of approval takes almost a year to get a grant, to get like matching fund. So I feel that if you are not big enough as a company or you get VC funding already, normal company will die and run out of cash in between while we are waiting for so many approvals and so many license process, right? So I think if we can reduce this bureaucracy and speed up many things that the government usually takes a bit of time, I think that can probably create more innovation and more AI startups in Thailand.
More tailwinds, less headwinds. Got it. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Kun Sam, take us home. Last question. What policy recommendations do you have from a macro level perspective?
Okay, after Ukrit has been released or Labai in Thai already, let me in terms of the banking to how to support in terms of regulation. I think for two reasons that how can we stimulate on AI regulation. I think yet definitely now the government and the regulator are understand well on how can they would like to support the AI. But the two key important thing that okay, to be succeeding on AI, you need to be understand how the data can be open. The open data is very, very important. So we have been investing in few countries now, Vietnam, in Indonesia now. So I have been reading and understanding on how each government supporting on the regulation of startup and AI right now. But how in Thailand right now, most of the data are not open enough to be able for the lender to, that I told you that too, we need more accurate data to be comfort for our risk management team to be advised to and approve the loan, right? So this is one other thing that currently now, the maximum that I told Dino already, we have only in-house score that we have been lent for the long time. Second thing, we have the NCB score, the credit bureau. And third, recently that not being new in Thailand is a mobile behavioral data, which is very hard for Thai people sometimes to find on this mobile behavioral data on this one, and that's all. The other alternative score, which I mentioned, we mentioned that is still not that get it. There's just only 3 scores that we can get it currently, and sometimes when we prove it, it's not that enough to get it. When we talk about the open data, I'm not asking for free. That's everyone knows, it's nothing free in finance, right? We can pay, but not that too high, right? Too high. But we can pay for it if the data is sizable. So, which I mentioned that the roadblock in Thailand was happening in that time when I met one of the, actually they're Vietnamese, but they are in Series C already. The startup called Trusting Social. You know that's in Indonesia. Every country use it except they would like to fundraising in Thailand at that time. But that time, I'm really looking for Thailand. I said, the Trusting Social, what they are doing, they are gathering the telco data and making it a scoring and sell to those who lenders. So we even talk with Trusting Social. That time they're still not that big, 5-6 years back already. It was introduced by, that time 500 tuk-tuks was invested in this company. So when we talk about this company, said, wow, this is very good. This is the powerful data. They got a lot of telco data. They buy the data from telco and they crunch the score and selling to us. And when we talk about in-depth with every party said it was blocked by the NSDTA or KSTC, that the data should be owned by from the telco itself. And the telco that time doesn't do the telco. Until now, only one telco doing and the other telco not doing yet. So now, even we would like to have the telco data, just only one telco can be used, the other telco not being used. So it's not 100% to be completely on using this one. And it's very different when I talk to Indonesia. Trusting Social can do it, Vietnam can do it, Malaysia can do it, Singapore can do it, but except in Thailand. So I think we need to see more how can we accommodate. The regulator can help, or the government can help that how can we get into more data. Don't compare with like in EU or in US, but you can, data is widely open. But looking in the Southeast Asia, comparing to each country, then we can helping push on this one. This is the first one, open data. The second one is that we have been informing this one in Bank of Thailand. We talked with Awantunai, right? You know that in Indonesia, they have the regulation for the banks that you have to lend to SME at least 30% out of the total lending portfolios. and if it's less than 30%, the bank will get fined for some certain amount. And this part stimulate the bank to go into SME sector. And SME sector is very important. Right now, everyone know in the retail market in Thailand, we have a debt burden, high debt burden already, almost 80%, 90%. The SME itself doesn't have enough capability and they need collateral to do it. So right now, most of the bank in Indonesia, even they don't have the capability or eager enough to lend uncollateral to the SME, but they can use the platform like I129, supply to them, and it's counted into under that 30% of the lending portfolio. So if I were the bank in Indonesia, so I would prefer to lend into the supply chain financing, ERP like I129, rather than lend to myself, because we have the accurate data already. We have the technology already, it's proven already. So that's why if possible, I think the bank in Thailand, we would like to test it out. But talking to Dino last night, if we have some proper mandate from Bank of Thailand, from the regulators that, hey, banks, now you need to, you can do on this one as well. I don't know whether we can set the certain limit or not. But some push, if we got some push from the government, then it will be, we can lend into this sector more and more. And if SME survive, then if the government would like to raise the minimum wages, it's fine already. No one will bias on this one. So I think this is the main one. That I think there are the two main: the open data and how can we stimulate the SME sector using the AI technology for lending.
Kun Sam, thank you very much for your comprehensive perspective. And this brings us to a close to our panel. We start off the day understanding some of the pain points from each of the panelists and the segments that they serve and how AI has been infused in the way they've delivered financial services. But most importantly, we came down to the crux of it. And then, hearing from our three panelists here, it came down to just three takeaways: world-class cloud computing and cloud-based technologies infrastructure. Number two, open free flow of data and the ethical stewardship thereof. And then lastly, talent and expertise in order to drive that. But I think what was very interesting that each of you spoke about that I didn't expect to come about today was the concept of humans as part of the journey and the importance of empathy and building trust and confidence came up in each of your conversations. I was doing a mental checklist in my head, and I'm not sure whether you realize this, but each of you spoke at least 70% talking about the humans, not about the technology. So I thought that was extremely cool. So please let me, on behalf of the Bank of Thailand, the organizers, and myself, say thank you for all the wonderful work that you are doing to change the lives of the people that you serve. It's a pleasure to have you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Such a fantastic discussion over here. And as we